Hi, my name is Petr Danchev, and I'm going to be presenting on the book Body Language, A Guide for Professionals. First, I'd like to start off with the 5 primary functions of body language. The first is expression of emotion. Although many expect this to be done through words, emotions are expressed mainly through the face, body, and voice, which is really important to understand in everyday communication. Next is communication of interpersonal attitudes. This is done through the establishment and maintenance of nonverbal signals like touching. The third function is to accompany or support other speech. Although we have learned this in class, I'll say it again. This is where you nod your head and use phrases like uh-huh. The fourth function is self-presentation. Presenting yourself can be done in many ways, but some of the main ways people do it is through attributes like clothing and makeup. Those two can make a significant difference in judging people's careers, friends, and much more. The last function is rituals. Now, you guys might be thinking voodoo or magic, but what I mean by this is greeting someone through handshakes or other rituals like hugs. In this same first chapter, the book also focuses on what do these nonverbal messages do for us. Well, first off, they emphasize. This can be seen when people say yes and nod their head simultaneously. The next thing they do is contradict. This can be seen when one friend says something to a group and then winks at their friend. Everyone might think one thing, but your friend will know that's not what you meant because of that wink. The third thing they do for us is they repeat. Repeating a message is powerful because it reinforces the initial statement and gives a clearer understanding. An example of this is to point in a direction while saying it. The fourth thing they do is substitute. Substitution can be seen when someone chooses to nod instead of a yes, or puts their finger on their lips saying shh instead of a simple be quiet. The last thing they do is accentuate. People usually accentuate in an emotional state, and this would be someone pounding on the table when saying something. As I moved on to chapter 2, the book started to dive in much deeper. Chapter 2 was all about the face and the many functions it has. If we look at people all around the world, then we quickly notice that muscle contractions and facial expressions that are produced from anger, fear, sadness, disgust, and enjoyment are pretty universal around the world. Most would consider this a great thing, but we should be careful. This is because although expressions are universal, in certain cultures it is unacceptable to show certain emotions in certain situations, and we must be aware of that. An example of this would be Asian cultures, where people are often not allowed to show certain behavior or emotion in public places. As we move on to the next point of combining signals, we realize it isn't as simple as just smiling. In fact, if you smile and raise your eyebrows, you would show the expression of surprise, which isn't exactly happiness. There are many other combinations I could list, but it would take all day, so if you have some free time, feel free to look them up. The last part of the chapter talked about stereotyping. This is because people often label others by their faces. A person with a baby face might be warm, weak, submissive, and less threatening, while someone with a more masculine face is often considered aggressive regardless of actual personality. Both of those might not be what people actually are. So with that said, next time you see someone, don't jump to conclusions. Rather, consider saying hi and have a conversation first. As I continued reading and got to chapter 3, it got really interesting. This is because chapter 3 is all about the eyes, and the more I read, the more I realized that eyes might be our most powerful signal. Most people think that communication through the eyes is something for adults, but from the minute a child can squint, they can also show almost any emotion through the eyes, which is pretty mind-blowing. What's even more interesting is that when people make eye contact, they usually maintain it for 3 seconds before a strong urge arises to look away. After people look away, stress is significantly decreased and people start to calm down. The interesting thing about that is people who like each other also tend to extend their gaze more often than those who don't, and it is not as stressful of a situation for them. Now, some people might be thinking, sweet, if someone is staring at me, they automatically like me. This isn't necessarily true because people also tend to stare before they perform an aggressive action. And to add to that, a more dominant person usually maintains eye contact better than a submissive one, which makes sense because submissive people avoid conflict. If we break it down into percentages, then people usually only look at each other for about 30 to 60% of the time. If time is longer, then we are usually involved or getting ready for battle. However, if people are able to raise that percentage to 60 to 70%, which doesn't seem like much, and manage to not fight, then the person is more likely to build rapport and a better relationship. The fourth and last chapter I'm going to be presenting on is about the arms, hands, and palms. Our arms are very important in our everyday interactions. We use our arms to connect to people and objects through our reach and ability to grasp. First, I'm going to focus on crossed arms and their importance to us. Crossed arms are important because people use them as a defense mechanism. Having your arms crossed across the chest creates a barrier which is meant to keep people out of your area. People often use this when they disagree or are unwilling to listen. Now, this becomes very important because in a group atmosphere, if we can get everyone to open up their arms, open communication can take place. This means we should focus on targeting someone's subconscious through their physical self and then proceed to discussion. If we take it a step further and add fists to the crossed hands, then the intention of the person usually goes from defensive to more hostile. People who usually use this are police officers standing on guard. This is important to know because it helps us maintain a safe distance through signals and gives us a signal we can use to show others to stay away. The third thing I read about was partial crossed arms. This is a more subtle defense mechanism used by people. It is often used in a public speaking environment or by people who lack confidence while meeting strangers because of its subtleness. This subtleness makes the speaker feel more secure while also not alerting the listener as much. The last gesture I'm going to talk about is the arms behind the back. Having your arms behind your back can have many forms and meanings, but I'm only going to talk about two of them today. The first gesture is having a clenched fist. This gesture often shows inner conflict and simulates a person holding themselves back. The second is having an open palm, which signals confidence. It's interesting that a very subtle difference in hand shape can have a huge impact on what people may be feeling. That's it for my presentation, so if anybody has any questions, now's the time.